Hi everyone, we're coming to you live from the Stanford Alumni Association via Stanford Video here on campus. My name is Fedra. I'm one of the managers at the Alumni Association. And before I forget, if you'd like to find us online, our website is alumni.stanford.edu. And if you click on resources, you can find us under Stanford Career Connect. And there you'll find all of the career resources like job postings, access to the directory, links to our career-related social media, and other tools to help you throughout your career. And likewise, we are so glad to be here today to introduce our pilot program. This is an inaugural online career coaching session. And for the next hour, we'll be video streaming to you live a career coach, a special guest, and you will be able to submit questions via chat. So if you have a career question and you're watching this live, please log in now and submit your questions via chat. I'll be guiding the conversation by repeating your questions to our special host, which leads me to the best part, introducing our special guest career coach. Today, I'd like to introduce Rainbow Chen, who has a master's degree from Stanford in organizational behavior and a bachelor's degree in human biology. She's worked as a strategy consultant, an internet marketer, and even an assistant director here on campus. We are really excited to have her. She currently is leading her own career coaching business. So without further ado, I'd love to introduce Rainbow Chen.
Thanks, Betty.
Thank you, Rainbow.
So I'm really excited to be here today in our inaugural session here. What I really love to do is work with clients and help them really tap into their deeper desires so they can really figure out what's really true for them and then have the courage to step out and ask for what they want in the world so they can really have the dream life that they are seeking. So this will be an interesting experiment because I won't get to dialogue with you directly and really dig deeper into your unique desires because I really want my clients I really want you to be able to achieve success in your own terms. So I'm going to do the best I can and give as generously as I can from my 10 years plus of coaching experience, as well as my own personal journey switching jobs every year for 5 years until I came back to the farm, to Stanford, to coach the Stanford MBAs for 8 years. Fetty actually asked me to think about one of the key questions that people ask, and the real one that people will ask is, how do I get a job? So with that, there's so many layers to it, depending on where you are, what you're looking for. But generally, one thing I really try to remind clients about is to really remember that it's a person hiring you. Right? So you really want to be networking and talking to people. So many times people think about, staying online on those job boards like Monster and just spending hours online trying to submit their resumes and look for a job that way. Now, those job boards can be helpful. Certainly Stanford, we have our job board as well. And so those are great opportunities to find out what jobs are out there. But when you really think about the way that people hire, first, they look internally to see if there's someone in the team that could take on the job, or then they ask for the people on the team if they know someone who would be a good fit for the job. So there's an internal job posting. And then if they really can't find someone internally or find a reference of someone to hire, then they'll go externally to those job boards like Monster or Dice. So you want to be thinking about, wow, I want to get in early to the company to talk to the people who are going to be the first ones to see the job posting. So it's really about networking and talking to people and really spending the time during the day meeting as many people as you can to just to get curious about them, learn more about them, find out what opportunities there might be for you to really give your time and talent to a company and to a position that is the right fit for you.
Thanks, Rainbow. We have a question here about networking. How would you recommend someone get started networking, actually taking that first step?
Mm-hmm. Good question. That one certainly is one where people get a bit nervous because they think about networking. They're like, oh, is it like all about schmoozing? And there is an element of, yes, you want to get out there and meet people. But when it comes down to it, it really is about building a relationship with someone. One-on-one. So those of you who are extroverts out there, don't worry, it's not like you have to go into a room and like suddenly talk to everyone. At the end of the day, it's really one-on-one conversations, and it's about meeting the right person at the right time. And so again, it's about reaching out to alums, going to networking events, finding out really talking to anyone and everyone. I love to tell this story about how I met someone at a bus stop in San Francisco, and I was just being the friendly, curious person that I am, and I just said, "Hey, where are you headed?" And they said, "Oh, I'm going to work." I said, "Oh, okay, interesting. What is it that you do?" She said she was a nonprofit, and I said, "Oh, actually, I'm really looking at getting into arts administration because I grew up in the performing arts. I'm trying to figure out how to take my management consulting experience to a nonprofit arts organization." And she said, "Oh, actually, I think I know someone in that." And so, a random conversation at a bus stop turned into a job lead. So it really is about just being really clear about what you're looking for, and then asking anyone and everyone about what potential opportunities there might be, or asking them if they know someone at any of your target organizations. One of the most important things that I like to tell people is to really be as specific as you can when you're making a request. If you remember the movie Jerry Maguire, to think about that time where he was saying, "Help me, help you," right? So the more specific you can be, talking about the specific role that you're interested in, the companies that you're considering to be your targets, the more specific you can be, the more likely it'll help someone jog their memory of someone that might be able to help you. So it's really about just talking to anyone and everyone.
Fantastic. We have a question from Larissa. She wants to know how a mid-career professional can stay current with resume styles and cover letters and best practices in that area.
Good question. Thanks, Larissa. So with the mid-career professional, there's first thing is resumes can be more than one page if you have more than 10 years experience. I often get that question a lot around how long should my resume be. To me, it's really about being relevant and really thinking about, again, overall the job search process is a marketing experience, right? So it's you getting really clear about who your target is, your employer, the function that you're focused on, and then right, with thinking about it from a marketing perspective, if that's your target audience, understanding what their needs are. And then taking your work experience, your characteristics, your what you bring to the table, and writing about it and sharing it in such a way that makes sense to show the target audience, your employer, your future employer, what it is that you have to offer that's beneficial to them. So in terms of staying current, there's a lot of different styles of resumes. Certainly Monster and other boards will have good examples of those. I think our Stanford Alumni directory, our career services site also has some examples. With mid-career, sometimes the headhunters I know tend to like to see text at the top and then some bullets underneath. I personally really love bullet formats, even in the summary of qualifications or that leadership profile at the top. It's just much quicker to scan. And you think about a recruiter only having maybe 20 or 30 seconds to scan a resume. I know because I've been in recruiting before. You really want to have those bullets to be really quickly targeting and letting them know what you have to offer. So to me, even in cover letters, I even do bullets. That first paragraph might be about why you're interested in the company, your connection. Ideally, if you have some connection to the company and you have a warm referral to get in. Then the second paragraph is, attached is my resume with more details. Here are a few short highlights of my experience. I actually put that in bullet form even, with a few sentences after each sort of like top 3 to 4 key traits or key experiences that they're looking for. And then I wrap up with the final paragraph about how we'll move forward together. So the real easy way for cover letters is you, me, we. A little bit about you, the company, and why I'm interested in you. A little bit about me and what I have to offer. And then finally how we're going to move forward in our next steps together.
Fantastic. And we have another question about what if you don't know what you want to do? How do you get started exploring that and discovering what you really want to do with your career path?
Oh, that is such a good question. And that is one that I wish I could talk to you directly about it more because it is so unique for each person. But I know that is a question that comes up, especially when you're first coming out of school. And given that there are many Stanford alums out there, I know we often there's so many opportunities and we have so many talents and trying to figure out what it is that we really want to focus on. the great thing is to know that in this day and age, many people have multiple careers. I think the average nowadays is 4 careers over your lifetime. I know I personally switch jobs every year from, as Fetty said, consulting to nonprofit to internet marketing, financial services. So it is really possible if you are clear about what you're looking for and know how to market and spin your experience to make sense to your target employer, that you really can make those changes. So just to caveat, to even start with, just know that like your first job out of school probably won't be your last. So that gives people a little bit of a little less anxiety around making that perfect first choice. So when you're really trying to figure out what you want to do next, I really recommend that you go back to what you've always loved. Like, what are your natural interests? What do you naturally go towards? I know I grew up in the performing arts, so after doing consulting, I really wanted to do something that was near and dear to me. And so really looking at sort of what I've always loved, was one way that I went. You can also look at, there's a whole bunch of exercises I give my private clients, but some of them are to look at things that you've loved over the years, different experiences that you have, or different even extracurricular activities that you enjoy doing, and really looking at sort of like, are there any threads of commonality across those different interests? Like, are there any particular skills? For example, even if you think of, I grew up in ballet, being in the corps, it was a lot about teamwork, a lot about really that detail orientation, making sure that every arm was correct. So thinking about like, what are those things that you enjoy doing, and then getting out there and talking to people, that sort of networking we're talking about, and really finding out what are ways that you could use those in the marketplace. So again, love to dialogue with you more directly about that, but those are just some starter ideas.
We have a question from Magali asking, do the same rules apply for an international career search? Or do you have any other advice that might be perfect for somebody who's thinking about working overseas? The rules might be pretty similar in terms of the frameworks and moving forward in that direction.
Yeah. So internationally, I do think it's still about networking and talking to people, maybe even more so. I know in some regions, it's really about that face-to-face interaction. So I know that we had, when I was working at the business school, we would have our GSB students actually go to the country and really pound the pavement when they were there. So one way to do it is to really set up meetings, right, to say, hey, I'm planning to be in town this date, and talking to alums and setting up those meetings and scheduling several meetings around that time frame. And then once you have those meetings set, then buy your ticket. So that's one way to kind of work it. But really getting in front of people, especially I know in China, it's a lot of face-to-face interaction. And so sometimes you'll want to, if you can, make a trip out there to really meet people in person. In the meantime, certainly setting up phone calls. I have clients by Skype, so you could do Skype conversations very easily. So I think that, again, it is really about the networking. And again, in some countries, maybe headhunters and executive recruiters could also be useful and helpful there. But it really is about talking to people.
We also have a question from Grace about finding the right fit. How do you know if a company is the right fit or a career field is the right fit? How do you evaluate that? And maybe this is an individual thing, but I think there's something universal about that too that could be really helpful to anyone out there.
So I think fit, that's a really good question. Thank you. The fit is, it really goes back to you really knowing yourself and knowing what your values are, what's really important to you, and really getting really specific about it. So if you say work-life balance is important to you, really thinking about like, how many hours a week do you want to work? Because for some people, right, people who came from investment banking, 60 hours a week is great, right? Because they're used to working 100 plus hours a week. For some of the rest of us, we want to go back to, sort of that, that book, 4-Hour Work Week, right? So it's really about getting really specific about what your values and what's important to you. And then once you're clear about what it is that you, what's important to you, then it's about asking good questions to really understand whether or not that company or that role is the right fit. one of my favorite questions to ask once I have the offer usually, or during informational interviews where I'm really trying to get under the hood and find out what's really going on at a company, is to ask, if you could change 1, 2, or 3 things about your job or about your company or about your team, what might that be? So then it's an opportunity for people to really start to tell you a little bit more about what's going on. If you and you say it in a really nice way where it doesn't make them feel like you're trying to ask them negative things about the company, but just, if you could change one thing about your job, what might that be? So again, trying to get a little bit more underneath what someone might say at face value if you just ask them about their company. So just to wrap, it is really about being clear about what you're looking for and what's important to you and your values, and then asking the really good questions to really get underneath it. One other thought is looking for people maybe who have left the company and asking them about the job or the company, because they may be also more willing to tell you what's really going on. So you can find those people through LinkedIn, or you can search. Search for people who have left the company as well.
Great. I think this is the sign of the economy. This question was actually submitted beforehand about just really having that competitive advantage. How do you stand out from the crowd? How do you make yourself visible? I think you've touched on it a little bit, but what's that competitive advantage, and how can you really stand out?
It's a really good question. Certainly, again, I'll keep going back to it. It's about having the connection, right? When you're talking to someone, to be able to say, so-and-so referred me, that will certainly have you stand out, because people like to be connected somehow, to have some reference point of who you are and have some connection to you. So you really, you'll hear me say it over and over again, but it's really about talking to people. Competitive advantage, I think it is about getting in front of someone and really showing them how passionate you are. One thing to think about if you're reaching out to someone, that subject line in the email, because we're getting tons of emails these days, and so many people are doing it, on their smartphones, that you really want to have a really strong subject line for your email. So thinking about, like, if you can talk about who your connection point is, so-and-so referred me, that can help. Also, if you can think about what it is that you can offer to them. So, for example, I had a GSB student one time who was looking to get into Apple. She grabbed several of her friends and just did a quick focus group about an Apple product. So guess what she wrote in the subject line? She wrote, Stanford GSB with product ideas for Apple. Well, that might get someone's attention more than just Stanford MBA looking to learn from your experience, right? So the more you can think about, like, what you can offer and really tap into that frame of mind of, I have something to offer you, and I have a lot of time and talent that I am looking to offer to the right place. So if you can sort of have that mind frame when you're going into the networking, I think that will also help you stand out, and really just being really crystal clear about, like, how great you are and how much you have to offer.
Great. I can relate to that. That it's a tough market out there, but those are really helpful tips. We have another question, and I love this question, from Anna. And Anna says that she's in a career that she loves, but she wants advice for approaching higher level managers, getting feedback about how to grow in her current position. Do you have any tips for how to approach higher level managers? I think, again, that's something that we can all relate to. How do you approach someone who, in a potentially intimidating situation?
Yeah. That's a really good question. That's really good for, like, on the career job management. And
right.
I love that Anna, is that right?
Yes, Anna.
Anna is really thinking about how to continue to grow and develop. I think that that's so important, to find people that can be great mentors for you. So, so in terms of reaching out to them, maybe you can be curious about a project that they're working on, or just asking about how they developed their career. People love to help in general. Most of us have kind hearts that want to help those who are humble and willing to learn. And so if you can really approach them from that place of either, hey, I'm really curious about something you're working on, I'd love to see if there's ways that I could be involved, or I'm so impressed by how you've built your career here. I'd love to, have, 20 minutes to chat and learn from your experience, perspective, and advice, we used to say at the business school, EPA. So really just approaching them with a sense of humbleness and a sense of learning, eagerness, and a sense of really wanting to soak in all that their experience. And so I think it's about just being curious. At the end of the day, whether it's networking or whether it's building relationships with higher managers, it's really about building a relationship. So just like any friendship, it's about, hey, let me be curious about you and let's see where we can interact and how we can help each other in our different roles.
Fantastic. Do you feel like it gets easier in your career approaching people that you work with and at different levels, various levels throughout the organization to get feedback? I feel like with experience, it gets a little bit easier the more you try it.
It definitely gets easier. And I also think it depends on the culture of the organization. Some organizations have really great, doors open kind of culture, and other ones you have to, kind of step up a little bit. But I think in general, if you have the right, that right spirit of eagerness and humbleness, I think most people are willing to open their doors.
I like that advice a lot. And we have another question, and this one's a great one too. I don't have a problem getting interviews, but I never seem to get the second or third round. I never seem to get that job offer. What's wrong with me? That's the question. I know. That's a tough one.
That's a tough one. I actually am doing mock interviews right now and doing interview coaching at Berkeley. And so 6 hours in the day, I'm seeing clients around that. And that's one, honestly, I wish I could talk to you directly about it, because it could be the way that you're presenting yourself. Here's what I'll say is, there's a statistic out there that says that what we say, our actual words, are only 8% of someone's impression of us. The rest actually has a lot to do with the way that you show up, whether it's your body language, the way that you're sitting, your vocal quality, and the way that you're sharing your words, or the way that you are groomed, right? So there are so many facets to the interview process that I'd almost want to do a mock interview with you directly to really get to see how you're presenting yourself. But just to be really thoughtful about, I can do a few quick tips on body language, really as much as you can, really focusing your attention to them. So even your feet pointing straight at the employer or to the person that you're talking to. Also, making sure that you're not crossing your hands in any way, right? Because that's a form of saying, don't want to be connected. So the more you can kind of keep natural open hands, speaking at gesturing at chest level, and then bringing it back down to that sort of neutral position like this. Those are just some quick tips on like body language. Just really, I think it's really about looking at your whole interview process and the way that you're showing up in the interview. Certainly, one thing just to remember is interviewing is, just don't take anything personally. It's really a subjective thing sometimes, and it's honestly not always the best candidate that gets the job. It's the person who's best able to present themselves and to really spin and market their skills so that it's really easy for the employer to see why they should hire you, right? The whole time the interviewer is trying to figure out, why should I hire you? Why should I take you over the next person? So the more that you can articulate how you can help them, right, and how you can show them that you're the best candidate in all of your answers, the better that you'll be able to continue on to that next round. The one other thing I'll say too is that just to remember that in the interview, this person, yes, is someone that you can be friendly with, but they're not your counselor, right? So it's not about divulging everything. I like to remind my clients that interviewing is a little bit like dating, right? You only say enough on the first date to get them to want to go out with you on the second date. So you only want to bring your best foot forward, be genuine, right? Because you don't want to end up in a bad relationship or a bad employer situation because you weren't really, you weren't really showing up as who you are. But it's not about telling them everything about you, right? So they ask, well, who else are you talking to? Who else are you interviewing with? You don't have to tell them that you're looking at 3 or 4 different industry sectors, right? You really want to show that you're focused and then bring it back to talking to the person in front of you. So really just remember, it's not about divulging everything about you, but really divulging the things that they need to know so they're going to want to keep talking to you in the next round. I find sometimes people tend to overshare in that first round, and just if you can just kind of keep remembering, it's sort of like game face on. You just need to keep playing, like in the playoffs, every time just put out your best game face and show them why you're the best candidate.
That's great advice. And I also wanted to extend just a reminder to the audience to keep your questions coming in. We're really grateful and appreciative, and hopefully you'll find some value and some help from answering these questions, from us answering these questions. Camilla just wrote in with a fantastic question related to new graduates. So what advice do you have for new graduates who are interested in pursuing the fields that aren't as mainstream, maybe aren't as popular, those popular fields being medicine, law, etc.
Yeah.
So maybe you can relate to this actually on a personal level too, of pursuing different venues and different avenues.
Absolutely. I will say that when I first came out of school, I did follow consulting route, which is pretty popular at Stanford. But I did my homework. I did talk to people, right? Did the informational interviewing to try to understand better what the job was. I actually did consulting projects as part of some of the business school classes and master's level classes that I was taking. And then I read a ton about it, and I really thought I knew what I was getting into. But quite frankly, sometimes you don't know what the job is until you're actually in it. So I didn't realize that there was a lot more sitting in front of the computer doing Excel modeling than the case interview, fun strategy pieces have. So sometimes, if you end up in a job that isn't quite right for you, just know that there's always opportunities to move on. So her question again was more about
new graduates pursuing
less popular fields. Less popular fields. Got it.
Less common, I should say.
I got excited about telling my story about how you learn about different fields.
Works, yeah.
So I think what I was going with that was the next step for me, of course, was then figure out, okay, well, consulting isn't quite the right route, but let me think about what I truly love. And so then I went back to, as I mentioned earlier, what I grew up with, which is the performing arts. And so and certainly that was a very different field, very small, organizations, a very small, narrow field of different organizations that are in the arts. And so, again, it's really, kudos for you to really follow what's right for you. I know it's very easy sometimes, especially on this, gorgeous campus, to get sort of, as I call it, swept up in the herd and feel like you have to do what everyone else is doing. So I really congratulate you and honor you for really following what's true for you. The one thing that I'll share a quote that someone once gave me in this nonprofit job search support group that I helped create. She gave me a quote that said, when you really follow your true calling, what's really your heart's path, the universe organizes itself to help you get there. So just, stay continually looking out for opportunities and really, again, being curious about other people and just looking for the ways that the universe might be, giving you hints and shortcuts for you to find what you're looking for. So really do keep talking to people and finding out how they got there. And when you're in that informational interview, that last question you might want to ask is there someone else like me who has been able to break into this field? Right? Because the more that someone's similar to you, the more likely they're going to want to help you. I find this especially helpful for international students. And so or someone who did a big career change, right? If you're an engineer and you're suddenly trying to get into a non-technical field, finding another engineer who's in that non-technical field, that person's more likely to take a bet on you because they've been able to make that jump themselves. So that's a great question to ask, at the end of information interviews as you're talking to people. But I would just say, keep looking for those people who are doing the things that you're doing, that you want to do, and keep learning from them. But really good job for sticking to what's really true for you. I know it's not always easy.
Yeah, absolutely. Taven writes in with an interesting question, thank you, about friendships at work and how do you maintain the balance? So how do you approach coworkers? Just professionals you work with? Is it okay to maintain friendships with them? How do you strike that balance in the workplace? It's a great question.
That's a really good question,
Right.
Jamin. Yeah.
Right, especially for those new to their career.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting balance, because in some companies they really encourage people to go out. Like I know, folks at Bain Consulting, right? The Bainies. I mean, they work hard and they party hard together, and so it is a really interesting balance to strike. Gosh, there's a lot that I would love to talk with you more offline about, specifically what you're curious about. But to me, it's really, I mean, the more in some ways that you have rapport with someone, good connection, a friendship, in some ways the better and easier it will be to work together, right? Because you have sort of that web of connection, where you both want to help each other. And so I think, if they're open to it, and they might want to go grab a bite afterwards, then certainly I think it's okay to ask. The key with asking, to me, anytime you're making a request, is to make it without attachment. So to be able to say, hey, I'd love to go out to dinner with you and get to know you more, and find out more about you. You want to ask it in a way that they don't feel pressured to say yes. So giving them an out sometimes to say, hey, if it's easy for you to do, that would be great. If not, no worries. I know that we're really busy sometimes at work, and you may want to have your downtime, but I'd love to get to know you more if you're open to that. That being able to ask and make requests without attachment to what the outcome is going to be will actually then have the person be able to really speak their truth and really say yes or no in a way that feels safe, if that makes sense to you. So I think it's great to want to build friendships with people, because it will make it easier for you guys to work together.
Rainbow, we have a question. I'll switch to a question that was submitted beforehand.
Yeah.
Should I go to graduate school if I can't find a job? I know this is really applicable to people who've just graduated or are out of the market for a while.
Yeah. Wow, that is also a very individualized question, I think. I'd want to dig in more to find out what's really going on in that person's situation, whether it's that they really have done everything they can in the job search, and they're really just at a stuck place, or maybe there's something, with the support of the right people, they could actually find the job that they're looking for. So I'd first want to sort of check in a little bit more about sort of what the job search process has been like and whether or not there's still opportunity there. And then secondly, I'd really want to find out what is the interest in going to grad school, right? If you have talked to a lot of people and find that grad school really is the next step, like you have to have a PhD in a particular kind of science to be in a biotech business development group, then it might be worthwhile to go down that process. Although I will say PhD is quite a commitment. So you really want to be thoughtful about it. I've had a lot of friends who have gone through that PhD program. So I'd really want to make sure that you've done your homework to really understand how critical that graduate degree is for you to continue on or to get into the career that you're looking for. My concern sometimes with people who say, well, I'm just going to go to grad school because I don't know what I want to do, I don't know what's next. Sometimes graduate school can be a good place to explore a particular subject that you're interested in, but I'd really want you to be sure that you're clear about what you're going to do after grad school. Because sometimes I've seen some people where they go to grad school and it just kind of postpones life. Because at some point you're probably going to go out into the working world. And so I'd want to make sure that your decision to go to grad school actually supports you to really have the life and the career that you want. And it's not just postponing that decision. So again, I'd love to dialogue more with you about this, but it's a really great question.
Absolutely. Thanks again to the audience for your questions. We just received one from Lauren about online branding, and Lauren wants to know, how important is it to have an online brand nowadays to be competitive in the working world or the interviewing world?
That is such a good question. I do know recruiters recruiters do check Facebook and LinkedIn. Oftentimes that's how they find people. But so you do want to be careful about what you're putting on LinkedIn and Facebook in particular, right? Because that tends to be a little bit more social. And so just be careful of what kind of photos are getting tagged online. I do think that because recruiters are checking those, that you want to be cognizant of what it is that you have online about you. I remember one of our GSBers actually had a company that actually looked at your reputation online. Unfortunately, I can't quite remember the name of it. I want to say it's like Reputation Defense or something like that. But there are companies out there that can help you look at that more. I think I was laughing because I'm going to be really honest and vulnerable here. I don't have a website up, and I've been having my own business for a couple years, and it's been okay. So I do think the online presence is something to be aware of, especially if you are a job seeker, knowing that recruiters are looking at you on LinkedIn and Facebook. But in terms of building your own business, I think it can be very helpful to have, because people often will want to check a website or check references via some website if you're looking at building your own business. But I'll be a case in point that you don't have to have it right away. So mine's in progress.
Rainbow, we have a question from Peter, and I think you touched on this a little bit, but I wanted to make sure Peter's question was recognized. It's about maybe back to the personal philosophy. He comments on your change from management consulting to nonprofit.
Yeah.
And he wants to know a little bit more, again, about that approach. Like, how do you go from something that has, what does he call it here? Personal intrigue to an impact, to something having an impact, and how do you make the right choice? And maybe this is a question, again, very specific to your experience, because he specifically references you and the change from management consulting to nonprofit.
That's a good question. So it sounds like there's some piece around, like, how did I go from personal intrigue to making an impact?
How do you choose something that has both? You were working in consulting, which is about impact, but now you want something that has personal intrigue and also makes an impact. What's the approach or the philosophy that you used to make that change?
Good question. So for me, I think some people are great for consulting. If you really love solving business problems and really enjoy numbers and like reading the Wall Street Journal every day, it is an incredible training ground and really great work experience. For me, to be quite honest, at the end of the day, saving a company $60 million didn't really make my soul sing, right? But helping clients get really clear about what they want and how they'll really like step up and ask for what they want in the world, that is so rewarding and exciting for me to do. So the thing about consulting for me was it was just a little too far. It was much further removed from the direct impact that I was looking to have in the world. So when I left consulting at the time, I really thought about like what I love and where I would really want to give my time and talent to. And so something like marketing, education, outreach at the San Francisco Ballet, that was something that was like my dream at that point, right? So for me, it was going back to like, what do I really love? And are there ways for me to do that in a way where I can still use some of my business skills, plus marry that with an interest that has long been mine since a child. So I looked for places where there were intersections like that. Business Volunteers for the Arts was another place, and I don't even remember how I came across that, but I'm guessing it was probably from talking to people and just saying, hey, I'm trying to figure out how to use my management consulting in the arts world. Do you know anything? And someone mentioned the Business Volunteers for the Arts, which was training and helping business people learn more about arts organizations and then matching them with individual smaller arts organizations that really needed volunteers with business acumen. So that's how I found a way to marry the two. So it really is about, again, being clear about what you're looking for and then talking to people and finding out, where are some of the places where you could have those intersections. I also like sometimes writing my dream jobs and then just kind of sharing that with people and seeing whether or not they know anyone that's doing something similar to that. I remember it's pretty impressive sometimes when you actually are true to what you really want, and then share it with people. I'm just thinking about when I came back to Stanford, my second year back at the business school, sitting down with our director, Andy Chan, at the time, and just realizing, wow, I wrote my dream job a while ago, and suddenly I realized that I'm in it. So I was able to really use all the different experiences that I had, helping people really get clear about what they wanted to do in life. So I, happy to dialogue with you more about sort of where you're at, and see how, maybe you can marry your different interests with something that you love. Thanks, Peter.
This begs the question then, and I'm just asking this, is it okay to stay in a career that you're not happy with? I imagine, sometimes we have to, sometimes people do. I'm in a job that I love, but I know not everyone can get there, or you have to try a few jobs to get there. So is it okay to stay in a job that you're not quite happy with, and how do you motivate yourself to get out of that if that's your current situation that you don't want to be in?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I think it goes back to what your values are, right? So for some people, it's not necessarily, the job doesn't have to be your calling, right? Sometimes it really is just a paycheck, right? And it's just to give you space to do what you love, right? I remember in internet marketing, when I was at All Advantage, and the accountant there, I became good friends with him. Speaking of friendships outside of work, I actually commuted with him, so we got to be friends, and I got to hear more about his life. And finally, one day, I was just curious. I was like, "So, do you really like accounting?" Because I'm not a big. I like my numbers, but I don't love them enough to have that be like the focal point of my job. And I do like playing on Excel still sometimes, but I was just curious with him. I was like, do you really like your accounting? Like, how do you do that? And I remember him saying, he's like, I like it enough, and I'm good at it, and it really affords me the resources to be able to care for my family, and I get to go to every kid's all of my kids' soccer league games. So this job is good for where I am in life, and I enjoy it enough. So for him, like, his values were around family, being able to provide for them, and being able to actually physically be there for them. So for him, it was like, it's good enough. For other people, it might not be, right? For other people, like for me, after a while in consulting, my soul was drying up, right? I couldn't perform. I couldn't even take dance classes because I was out of town so much. And so for me, it took a while. I think, quite honestly, maybe 3 months in, I was like, I don't think this is right for me, but it's my first job out of school. I can't quite up and leave right away. So I kind of took the time to really, really sit with it, and to really think about, like, okay, well, what else would I want to do? How do I do a good job now where I am, and really learn as much as I can? Actually, one of the partners at Booz Allen, I remember him saying, when you're in a job, you want to dive deep, right? And learn as much as you can. But every once in a while, pop up to the surface and see what's around to see if you're still happy in the place that you're in. And so I think that's a really good way to think about it. But for me, it was really, I just got to the place where I was like, yes, this is a prestigious job. Only 10 people in the U.S. were hired at my level. But at the end of the day, it's not right for me. And I sort of believe that life is short. So again, my value is I want to enjoy life. And I really want to do things that impact the world in a way that only I can do. And so really getting more clear about that really helped me then have the courage to get out there and follow, really follow that, and sort of be motivated to really look for the thing that would help me offer my time and talent to the world.
Yeah, that's a great story. So how valuable do you find the online self-assessments or offline self-assessments, personality tests, Myers-Briggs, things like that? Do you find value in those?
Yeah, absolutely. The thing that I really appreciate about the self-assessment test is that they are great ways to brainstorm and open up the possibilities, right? So Myers-Briggs is great from a personal standpoint in terms of getting clear about what some of your interests might be. I actually think Myers-Briggs is really good for teamwork and really getting clear about sort of what your preference styles are like and what someone else's are like, so you can really work together better. But from a personal standpoint, Myers-Briggs and other online assessment tools, like the ones that are on the Stanford Alumni website, as well as there's certainly a bunch online. Career Leader is one that we used a lot with the Stanford business school students. So I think those are great in terms of like opening up the possibilities, right? Now, the one thing you want to make sure is that they're descriptive, not prescriptive, meaning that just because the assessment tool says you should think about this doesn't mean that you have to then go out there and do it, right? So knowing that it is helpful sometimes to do those assessments and then work with a career counselor or a career coach to help you get more clarity about which ones you really want to pursue more. I personally just have a questionnaire that I give to my clients at intake, where I ask them a lot of different questions, but it's not a specific like personality test. But certainly, I'm happy to review the ones that clients have already done, because they do give you good ideas of possibilities.
Oh, well, speaking of jobs that make you happy and finding the right job and taking self-assessments and knowing yourself, switching a little bit to the tactical level to get to that job.
Yep.
We have a couple of questions coming in about interviewing and some wanting advice about how to interview and what some of the best practices are. Interviewing can be pretty scary for many people at all different levels.
Yeah.
So if you have any interviewing tips, we would love to hear those.
Sure, I have a ton.
Oh, great. Perfect.
Let's see what we can do in the next few minutes. Like I said, I've been coaching at Berkeley, so this is very top of mind right now. With interviewing, I think you mentioned that sometimes it can be scary for people. One thing I like to remind people about interviewing is it really is a conversation. At the end of the day, the person across the table from you is trying to figure out whether or not you're a good fit for them, right? They're really trying to assess, why should I hire you? And I could break it down for you into 3 buckets that we used to teach at the Stanford Business School, which is, can you do the job? Or do you have the skills and aptitude for that particular role? Will you do the job? Are you excited and motivated? And then finally, are you a good fit, right? So are you going to get along with my team? So again, can do, will do, how fit are sort of 3 buckets that people are trying to assess as they're talking to you in the interview. And again, they're trying to assess whether or not you're a good fit, but you too are trying to figure out whether or not they're the right fit for you, because you're about to give a lot of your hours potentially, to this employer. So you want to make sure that there's a really, it's the right organization, the right manager. Once you go further down the line, really sort of asking questions to get under the hood and understand whether or not that manager's work style will be one where you feel supported and can really do your best work. So I think that sometimes helps alleviate the anxiety around it. If you can remember that it's really about 2 business people coming together to meet and really find out whether or not they're going to be good partners. So that sometimes helps alleviate some of the stress. There's so many interview tips to give. I'll give you one more that the first question that people have often get is, tell me about yourself or walk me through your resume. And that one's the one where a lot of people tend to kind of hang themselves right off the get-go. So I don't want you to do that. So here's my tip for you, which is to, again, the tell me about yourself is the one time that you have a blank slate to answer the question in my mind, which is, why should I hire you? So you really want to be thinking about the 3 to 5 things that they absolutely need to know about you. So really thinking about what are those key skills that they're looking for, those key characteristics, and making sure you highlight those. So sharing very briefly some of those, and then maybe just highlighting a couple of the experiences that you have on your resume to show that you have those skills and characteristics. Those are that's a really good way to answer the tell me about yourself. I really don't want to hear your life history, where you grew up, unless it's pertinent to the job, right? If you're going to be in a job that's very internationally focused and you're going to be meeting with a lot of diverse people, then sure, then it's relevant for you to tell me, oh, I grew up all around the world. I really know what it's like to build rapport with someone quickly and be able to understand cultural differences. That's great. right, if it's relevant to the job. But if not, then tell me something else that's really going to help me understand why I should hire you. Those are a couple of them. I could do one more around preparation. So the thing that I have clients do at the very, very basics around preparing for an interview is to really write down the top 5 skills that the company is seeking. So that way you get really clear about what they're going to be asking questions around. So if you know kind of the top 5 skills they're looking for, then you know to be prepared to answer some behavioral interview questions potentially and give examples of how you've exemplified those different skills. So that's sort of one bucket that I have. The second bucket that I'll tell clients to make sure that they prepare in advance is top 5 reasons why they're the best candidate for the job. So they would get really clear and confident about all the talent that they have to offer. And then the third bucket is top 5 reasons why you want that particular job. And then finally, the top 5 reasons why you want to work at that company. So again, top 5 skills, top 5 reasons you're the best person for the job, top 5 reasons why you want the company, top 5 reasons you want the job. And finally, I like to tell people to think about what's the one thing you want them to remember about you. Because that's a great anchor to have just in case you get stuck and you have like a stress interview, right? Like in banking, they want to know that you can work well under high stress. At least you have that one thing to anchor you to make sure that before you leave the interview, they know this about you so that, again, it helps them know why you're the best candidate for them to hire. So those are a few tips in there, but there's a whole litany still in my brain and body that I could share with more time.
No, that's fabulous. We have a question from Hannah. It's very similar, so the timing is good, about phone interviewing. Would you recommend the same process for phone interviewing? And do you have any extra tips for those dreaded words, phone interview, phone screening?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say the same things apply, especially around prepping and answering the tell me about yourself. With phone interviews, I actually recommend that my clients dress up in the outfit, right? And make sure that they're in a space as if they're talking to the person. Because it's a very different thing to be in a suit, in a quiet space at a desk, talking to the person versus waking up and just kind of sitting in your PJs, talking and eating at the same time. So you really do want to put yourself as if you were in a real interview, because there's something to be said for at least wearing the right shoes and maybe a blazer that puts you into a certain mindset when you're interviewing. With phone, you also want to be really careful about not speeding through your answers. I know I talk very quickly, but I'm hoping that is helpful so you can get as much tips as we can get in this hour. But with the phone interview, because there's less visual cues, you really want to make sure that you're ending on a down tone, right? So that you're clearly finishing your sentences in a way that sounds like you're declarative and answering the question fully. And then taking a pause and breathing. Because if you talk too quickly on the phone, it'll be harder for the person to really understand you. The other tip I'll give you as you're doing phone interviews is you can always record yourself, right? You could webcam yourself as you're doing the interview so that then you can go back and really learn from that particular interview. So those are just a few quick tips about phone screens.
No, that's really helpful, I think, for everyone. And we have time for one final question. So this is our last question of the session, and it has to do with work-life balance. And Grace writes in and she asks, how do you manage your time looking for a new job when you have your current job? Researching companies, preparing for interviews. How do you manage your time to do that?
That is a really good question.
Really good
Thank
and
you,
very
Grace.
helpful.
Yes, quite honestly, it's like you kind of have to treat the job search as if it were another job. So now you have 2 full-time jobs. And so it is a lot to juggle and is a lot to take on. But if it's really right for you, get the support that you need to help you be the most efficient, to help you feel the most supported. Surround yourself with people who are going to just remind you of how important what you're doing is and looking for the new job. So it really is about balancing that time. And I think if you think about it as a second job, you'll make more of that commitment that you need to make to find that new job. It is a lot to take on, but I definitely recommend that you get the right people and the right resources to help you be more efficient and help you get to that next job faster and easier than you could do on your own. So definitely, I think, surround yourself with the right people, and then just treating it like another full-time job. And but also at the same time, while you're doing that, make sure that you give yourself time for breaks, right? So, I know it can be a lot to try to do morning meetings with someone, or kind of steal away to a conference room or outside to do a quick informational interview, or to schedule them in the evenings or in the in the weekends. But really do make sure that you're also giving yourself time to rejuvenate and nourish and do the things that you love to do for fun too, because all work and no play doesn't really work very well for most people. So balance the full-time job search with your job, and also give yourself some time to replenish and nourish.
Any closing remarks after that? That was our final question.
I just, thank you for this opportunity. I hope that it's been helpful for each of you. And again, I know that it's not easy necessarily to do this without being able to dialogue with you further. So I am happy to talk with any of you who are interested in exploring working together more. I'm happy to do what I usually offer. I've been doing the job search meetings at San Francisco in the public library. We've been meeting monthly, and so that's one way to get more great tips from fellow alums. So that's something that we offer on a monthly basis. And if you sign up for the San Francisco Club, or go to that website, I believe it's stanfordsf.org, but Google it.
That sounds right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's right. So it'll be listed there. And then I think we might try to do one in Palo Alto soon as well. So that's also a possibility. And then, of course, personally, as a career and life coach, I'm happy to do complimentary consultations with people. So if any of you are interested in wanting to explore working together more, I'm happy to set up a 45 to 60-minute phone call to find out sort of where you're at and what you're looking for, and figure out if I'm the right coach for you to hire to help you really achieve success as you define it, really in your own terms, so that you can have the life that you are looking for.
Thank you so much, Rainbow, for volunteering your time to be here today.
Yeah.
And I also wanted to say thank you for everyone for writing in and joining us, or checking in, or just watching the live stream. This was our pilot, and it wouldn't have been successful without you. And again, if you wanted to find us online, it's alumni.stanford.edu under resources. So goodbye, Stanford. Thank you.
Thank you.